Hello, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough. Today we're going to be doing a rant video because I haven't done one of these in a very long time. The very last rant video I did for Media Wiz was 2018 when I did a video on Sonic 06. Yeah, that was the last rant I ever did, but I've always wanted to do a rant video, but I just, haven't been able to do it because I've been busy with reviews and commentaries and then vlogs every once in a while. And I did consider doing this as an epic media battle for a while, but I decided to just do it as a rant because I haven't done it in a while. And really, I just wanted to get my thoughts out on this particular subject because it's something I've noticed with both these movies. Not only are they similar in premise, and they came out around the exact same time, they came out in the same year, but slowly they've been milked into franchises. And also, it's appropriate because earlier this year we had the Megamind sequel and the Megamind show on Peacock, and then Despicable Me 4 is coming out in a couple of months, so I thought it'd be kind of appropriate to just do this as a rant video. As for Despicable Me, it started with a simple concept, wanting to make a movie where the main character was a bad guy. Sure, it's been done before, but the writer and director, Sergio Pablos, wanted to do something with the concept. Pitching the idea to animator Chris Meledandri, he thought it was a good one and figured it could work well to be the first film for his up-and-coming animation studio, Illumination. The idea was given to the writing duo of Ken Dario and Cinco Paul, and the directing duties were passed over to Pierre Coffin and Chris Renaud, who were mostly known for commercials and working on Blue Sky films at the time. And in the end, Despicable Me put Illumination on the map. They went from a newcomer to a company that happily made Universal a lot of money, with their own respective animated franchise. As for Megamind, it was the brainchild of the DreamWorks regulars Brent Simons and Alan Schoolcraft. First it was titled Mastermind, but that was already copyrighted, and for a while the film was titled Ubermind, with the original plan of having it be live action and have Ben Stiller play the title character. In what I can only assume was supposed to be a spiritual successor to Mystery Men, possibly. Over time, the idea became to make it animated, and for a while the lead role was going to be played by Robert Downey Jr., but because of scheduling conflicts, it landed in the lap of Will Ferrell. From there, a lot of DreamWorks regulars went on to direct and produce the film, along with assistance from the likes of Justin Theroux and even Guillermo del Toro. Admittedly, it was only for 3 weeks, but still, that's pretty cool. If you remember 2010, you probably remember both movies coming out and accusations of similarities and even ripping off going around. But before we talk about the legacy that both these movies have spawned, I think I should give some quick thoughts on the movies themselves. And I'm not going to talk about the sequels or anything like that. We're going to get to that a little later. This is just my quick thoughts on both these movies as a whole. So what are both movies about? What do they have in common? And what are their differences? Well, Despicable Me is about a supervillain named Gru who feels like he's past his prime, constantly getting one-upped by a newer, younger villain called Vector. So he plans his biggest plot yet, stealing the moon. But for this plan to work, he needs Vector's shrink ray, and to accomplish this, he adopts 3 little orphan girls so they can sell Vector cookies, and while he's distracted, Gru can sneak into his base and steal the shrink ray himself. He doesn't already have a shrink ray, or have his live-in scientist buddy who makes inventions for him on the regular make a shrink ray for him. Those are the kind of things that you don't think about, because then there wouldn't be a movie. And even if you haven't seen this movie, after all these years, you could probably guess where this is going. His heart grows 3 sizes, and he realizes he doesn't want to be a bad guy anymore. He grows a heart, loves the girls, and soon becomes a father figure to them. All the while, the comic relief yellow things make funny noises. Fun fact, when they were originally coming up with Despicable Me, the minions were supposed to be these big, burly men, like most movie henchmen tend to be. Then they decided to make things easier for themselves by making a very simple design and making them speak a language that was basically utter gibberish. Boy, was that a brilliant decision, because let me tell you, I think it's pretty easy to see that those characters became the runaway sensation, didn't they? Rewatching the movie for the sake of this video, I think the movie holds up fine for what it is. The movie has funny moments, likable characters, animation that actually holds up pretty well for the studio's first film, sentimentality, and you do feel growth for the character of Gru as he goes from supervillain to father figure. That being said, the movie's weakness is probably its predictability. If you've seen other stories like this, like, say, The Grinch, for instance, you probably know where things are going. But still, I did enjoy rewatching this one. That's what I think of Despicable Me. Now let's move on to the one that everyone seems to consider as the underrated gem, Megamind. Megamind starts off as a parody of Superman, with Megamind's home planet being sucked into a wormhole and his parents shooting him off to a distant planet so that he may survive. But when he is launched, another alien baby is sent off as well. They both land on Earth. That baby lands in the home of a wealthy, affluent family and grows up to become the superhero Metro Man, while Megamind lands in a prison yard and grows up to be a supervillain because he is often looked down and treated badly for his differences. Time goes by, Megamind and Metro Man become mortal enemies, and they pose an interesting possibility of a supervillain succeeding at destroying their adversary. Megamind takes over the city, but grows a sense of loss now that he doesn't have a foe to fight, feeling like he's lost some sense of purpose. So he tries to create a new hero called Titan, but he soon uses his powers for bad, and it's up to Megamind, his own minion, and the town reporter and love interest, Roxanne Ritchie, to stop him. So Megamind's definition of superheroes and supervillains leans more into the typical comic book tropes, whereas Despicable Me tends to lean more into the James Bond-style spy movie definition of heroes and villains. Also, Despicable Me tends to lean more towards the family aspect. It wasn't until Despicable Me 2 when they introduced the idea of Gru having a romantic interest. And in Megamind, that's pretty much a key component, and that Megamind ends up hooking up with Roxanne Ritchie because they realize they actually have a lot in common. At the time, the movie was mostly brushed over since the concept of a villain realizing he has a heart was already done that year with Despicable Me. But it seems a lot of people have realized there's more to it than your usual DreamWorks movie. Sure, a lot of their trademarks are still there, especially in the comedy, but there's much more to it than that. You have an interesting idea of a villain who uses his new powers to impress the girl he always liked, and he immediately grows bitter when she tells him that she'll never really see him that way. It's sort of like what they did with Syndrome in The Incredibles, but instead of hero worship, the villain is pretty much a superpowered version of an incel. Oh yeah, and the movie has a lot of memes to it. That definitely helped bring attention to this movie. Plus, I always liked the Minion in this movie. I mean, he's not the Minions, but I liked his character. He had a cooler design. David Cross does a really good job as the character, making him funny and likable, and I like the relationship between him and Megamind as it goes throughout the movie. So over time, it seems Megamind finally started to get its fair shake, and people saying it's actually better than people originally thought, and it's more intelligent, and people didn't really give it a fair chance back when it first came out. I mean, it did well at the box office, and critics and audiences enjoyed it, but it didn't really have a lot of the praise that it's getting compared to now. Out of the two, Despicable Me was the one that really took off. I mean, after all, they did take a $69 million budget and came back with a $543.6 million at the box office, so you know Illumination was going to be loyal to this movie. Every following movie that came out afterwards was followed by From the Guys That Brought You Despicable Me in all the posters and all the trailers. This pretty much became Illumination's Toy Story or Shrek, to the point where, once the merchandising rolled in, you know they were going to capitalize on it as soon as possible.
Minion clock, minion sticker sheet, minion flask, blow up minion, minion bag, minion easel, minion toys, minion in a glass. What about this fucking thing? I really need this!
There were sequels, short films, TV specials, a spin-off series dedicated to the Minions, because everyone still loves those characters, right? Video games, and of course, theme park attractions. I mean, it is Universal. What did you expect?
Universal Studios. Cha-ching.
I already did a short review on Minion Mayhem a long time ago, but interestingly, one of their latest editions, VillainCon Minion Blast, actually has gotten pretty bad feedback amongst the theme park discussion community, often being criticized for high capacity levels, long wait lines, and considered a generally weak interactive shooter, nowhere as good as something like Toy Story Mania or the Mario Kart ride. You know it's pretty bad when this...
And no way will he shoot you with a fart gun.
Oh, no?
looks like a better theme park attraction in comparison to your latest Minion-themed attraction. But more importantly, let's talk about the movies themselves, specifically the sequels, because, well, everyone's already talked about the Minion movies at length, so let's just get on with the main movies. For me, the Despicable Me sequels reflect how I generally feel about Illumination Pictures. They're fine for what they are, but they're not really anything great, at least to me. At the time, Despicable Me was a very unique movie, and it was something different from Disney, Pixar, and DreamWorks. But soon enough, the more movies they made just felt like they were more of the same. And keep in mind, I liked their Mario movie, and I didn't mind their first Secret Life of Pets movie. I haven't seen the Sing movies all the way through, but I've heard mixed things as of now. My point is, a lot of Illumination's movies just feel standard, safe, inoffensive, usually relying on easy fart jokes and pop culture references. With the original Toy Story trilogy, I felt like they made those movies because they wanted to keep the story going, because they genuinely had ideas and wanted to keep making them. After a while, these just feel like they were made just to bank on brand recognition alone. Like a lot of other people out there who've ranted about Illumination's movies, I don't know if I can really say that the Despicable Me sequels are bad in a conventional sense. They have good animation, they have a couple funny jokes here and there, they're not complete wastes of time, but I don't know, there's just something about them where they don't really do it for me. I mean, I feel like Despicable Me could have worked much better as a standalone film, and maybe the second one, but by the third movie, when they come up with Gru having a brother that was never mentioned before until that movie, it felt like they were just pulling out random ideas just so they could keep making sequels every few years. Although, that being said, that's still somehow less painful than what they ended up doing to Megamind. It's one thing for a franchise to get milked into oblivion, but in the case of Despicable Me and movie series like it, it's typically expected. Megamind, on the other hand, went through another form of franchise rot. It's the kind where an original movie just lays dormant for a long time, it grows cult classic status on the internet, and you see people talking about it more and more, and then the executives at one of the big studios decides they could possibly profit off of the nostalgia. So instead of getting an influx of sequels right away, like Despicable Me did, Megamind gets a legacy sequel made years after the first one came out. And just look at how cocky they got with this trailer.
Megamind is back. I'm kind of a big deal. And you're welcome.
It's like they saw the instant internet popularity with people rediscovering the movie after all these years, and knew that people would want a Megamind sequel, so they just basically rushed one out and dumped it onto Peacock because, well, didn't put it in movie theaters, you don't really have a whole lot to lose. If it doesn't make a profit, doesn't matter. It goes to streaming service. You don't have to worry about stuff like that. And that whole "you're welcome" in the trailer, that just comes off so self-congratulatory. It's like, the movie is so bad, it does not warrant that "you're welcome." I get it's a streaming movie, which in some cases is like the new generation version of the straight-to-video sequels we got in the 90s and 2000s, but Megamind vs. the Doom Syndicate is so much worse than it has any right to be. The animation is cheaper than the video game made for the original movie, none of the original voice cast returns, they changed Minion's name for no real reason other than they probably didn't want to get sued by Illumination, and the story feels more like an exaggerated fan fiction. They established this dumb crap about a group called the Doom Syndicate who were never mentioned once in the first movie, but going by this movie's continuity, Megamind has worked with them and was really close with them. Yeah, it's almost like the whole thing of Gru having a brother that was never mentioned in the third Despicable Me. It's that forced. And so the rest of the movie is Megamind trying to figure out if he wants to be a villain again and join these Suicide Squad rejects, or stay a good guy. Sure, the idea of having a group of villains wanting Megamind to go back to being evil could work, and the Doom Syndicate have even appeared in the original Megamind video game, but none of them look the same as they did. So why use the name of this group if you're just gonna make up new characters anyway? There's also this new little girl character who's really only there to hammer home the whole message of teamwork makes the dream work, but she really doesn't offer anything in the rest of the movie. Really, this whole thing just feels like a backdoor pilot for the streaming service show that eventually came out shortly after. And the thing is, turning DreamWorks movies into TV shows, that's not a new concept. They've done it with How to Train Your Dragon, Madagascar, Kung Fu Panda, Monsters vs. Aliens for some reason, and they even did a special of Megamind on DVD when the original movie came out. And from what I heard, there were plans of them doing a Megamind show on Nickelodeon, but I'm assuming it didn't happen because the movie didn't do as well as they wanted it to. I haven't seen any of the Megamind Rules show. I've heard it's not as bad as the Doom Syndicate movie, but still, this just feels like a really desperate attempt at cashing in on a movie that recently became popular again. Considering the level of animation, I'm willing to believe that they made this show a long time ago, sat on it because Megamind didn't do well at first, and now they decided to release it because, well, streaming just makes projects like this easier to process. They don't have to go through scheduling on television standards or anything like that. You can just dump the show all at once onto a streaming service. I can't confirm if any of this is the case, but it's just something I've noticed and thought about for a while. So, At the time of making this video, what exactly do we have to expect from both of these franchises? Allegedly, they want to make a third Megamind movie, and they want to get Will Ferrell to come back as the title character. You know, Will Ferrell has done plenty of movies I don't like, but I will give him credit that, for the most part, he doesn't seem to do movies unless he's 100% on board with them. It is an interesting possibility, and maybe if they come up with a good concept for it, maybe it can work. But I think we're going to need some time away from Megamind to get over how awful this sequel was. As for Despicable Me, they're releasing a fourth movie this July, and while none of the trailers are really selling me on it, I am curious to see Will Ferrell as one of the villains. Mostly because it's probably the closest we're going to get to seeing Gru and Megamind fighting it out, so that's something. Also, Will Ferrell and Steve Carell generally have pretty good chemistry together from stuff like The Office and Anchorman, so who knows, maybe that part of it will be good. So yeah, this is the first rant video I've done in quite a while. It's just something that's been on my mind because I heard about how bad Megamind 2 was, I watched it, I did consider doing a review of it, but pretty much everyone's already said what needs to be said, so I decided to just kind of give some quick thoughts in this video. And also I thought it was interesting that it kind of ties into the upcoming Despicable Me 4 because Will Ferrell is in that, but he said he didn't want to be a part of Megamind 2. I don't know, I just thought it was generally pretty interesting, so I decided to, work all this together and talk about the inevitable franchise rot that comes with a franchise, whether it's one that's milked into oblivion immediately or one that ends up getting picked up years after the fact and it finally becomes popular and a cult classic. So yeah, I mean, if there's any other kind of videos like this that you want me to do on any given topic, feel free to suggest any and I'll see if I can get around to them. But until next time, I'm the Media Wiz, because one art form wasn't enough.
Guy. Duh.
Despicable Me 3, aka Minions 2. Your fucking kids love those little shits.